Let me guess, you're single. How do I know? I can tell by the deductive powers of he clicked on this video, so he must be. And you know what? There's absolutely nothing wrong with being single, especially if you're single by choice and if you're enjoying being single. But I'm guessing a lot of you are single not by choice. If that's the case, let's help you not be single. So as recently presented with this Reddit post, it says, be honest, why are you single? And assuming these people are honest, which I think they are in this case, given the depth and sadness of some of the answers, this gives a lot of really good answers and a lot of really honest answers to why you possibly might be single as well. So I want to go through some of the ones that I think are the most prevalent and give you concrete solutions. First reason we're going to talk about, upvoted 18,000 times, I do not leave the house. Yeah, that's a problem. And that is actually probably the biggest reason why most guys are single. If you are not meeting girls, you're not going to date girls, right? And yes, you could try online dating, but even with that, you're gonna have to leave the house for the dates, right? Also, even if you wanna go that route, if you're not leaving the house and having an interesting life, if you're not going to the gym, if you're not doing things you enjoy, if you're miserable in general, you're not gonna bring a lot of good energy and good vibes, good conversation to the dates either, okay? But yeah, leaving the house is key. There is a reason why people that are in high school and college date a lot more than people after high school and college, because they are leaving the house, going to class, going to parties sometimes, but at least going to class, and meeting girls, bumping into them in their everyday life and interacting with them. You are not going to date if you don't interact, right? Way back in the original days of old school canned structured game, the first game model that I ever came across was FMAC, find, meet, attract, close. What is the first step? Find. Right? If you are not coming across girls, you're not going to date any girls. Take a hard look at your life. How much time are you spending interacting with girls? How much time are you spending interacting with a television or a computer screen? And yes, that might be your job in some cases, but I'm talking about non-job computer screen use. How much time are you spending there versus how much time you're spending socializing? If you don't want to be single, spend more time with women and less time with screens. So let's take it one step further. Once you leave the house, where should you go? Well, honestly, wherever there are the girls you're actually attracted to and into. So for a lot of people, bars and clubs is a great option. You know why? Because the bar or club has done the job of gathering together a bunch of attractive girls who are in a social mood in one place for you, and that's a great way to meet a lot of them in short order. But let's say nightclubs aren't your thing. What else can you do? That's completely fine. You don't have to do that. You can still go to coffee shops and do your work there, or you know what? Just have a coffee there and be around people. You can go to the nice shopping areas and walk around. You'll meet some girls there. You can join a fitness class of some kind. Yoga classes are great. Dance classes are absolutely amazing for meeting women. Or you know what? I talked earlier about how being a student and being around women is really good. Go join a class you're interested in a local community college, grad school, something like that. Just put yourself around some women in your life, please. Reason number 2, I am a very boring guy with nothing much to say. This is a very common way of thinking, and it's sometimes to some extent true. Here's what I would do if this was my idea of myself and my idea of my path in meeting women. Number 1, realize that you do not have to be brilliant to meet women. There are lots of idiots in the world who are not single. There are lots of idiots in the world having kids. There are lots of really boring, lame people in the world who are not single and having kids. So the bar is not nearly as high as you may think it is. And this is very common for intelligent, educated people, which is a lot of my audience. If you're used to being good at things, if you're used to being competent, and you know that talking to women is not what you're best at, you may hesitate or you may shy away from it because you're like, I'm not great at it. I'd rather do something that I'm comfortable with and I know I'm good at, okay? But realize you do not have to be that good. You just have to be better than awful, okay? And you probably are already there. Now, beyond that, it's also true that you could be more interesting and have more things to say. But you know what? That is fixable. Number 1 way that you can have more things to say is actually kind of along the lines of what I said before, which is just believe in yourself, right? If you actually say things with confidence, you can make even lame things sound cool. For example, if I tell a particular story and the whole time I'm like,
yeah, well, so I went over here and then this happened and then da 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 da.
That's a boring story, regardless of the content. On the other hand, if I told the same story, like, oh my God, you know what? We went over here and you know what happened then? It was, right? When I do that, when I actually bring some energy to my story, when I act like my story is cool, the story itself becomes much cooler. And I know this works because I've actually done tests where I go out and I do game intentionally saying lame things in an excited way, or like I think they're cool, or in a way that builds tension, and I can actually be very charismatic while saying lame things. So number one, the shit you have to say isn't as lame as you think. Number two, if you bring energy, you'll make it less lame. Number three, here's how you make what you're saying less lame in terms of content. Step one, ask fewer questions, okay? Don't ask questions. Instead, make statements and tell stories. Simply, if you were thinking about asking the question, what do you do for a living? Instead, maybe answer the question. Be like, I bet you do something very professional. You have that vibe. Much more interesting, right? What do you do for a living is taking value. You're asking them for information. You're providing nothing. It's also a question they've been asked 1,000 times before. When you say, you seem very professional, what do you do? I'm curious because you have an interesting vibe. There's so much more information. There's so much more value there, right? Why do you think they do something professional? What's interesting about their vibe? There's so much more for them to respond to that they haven't been exposed to before. It's a much more interesting question in the sense that it's not a question, right? So answering the question in that way is better than asking it. Also, oftentimes, answering the question for yourself is better than asking it. So instead of asking what they do for a living, talk about your job and specifically what you love about your job or what you hate about your job, what's emotional about your job, right? We're all human beings and we're sharing this human experience. Usually the best part of conversation isn't the facts, it's the relatable emotional stuff, all right? So instead of asking the question, answer the question. The other thing you can do, and this is a specific exercise I teach my students on boot camp all the time, and it makes a huge difference in their results. There's an exercise I call question, answer, tease. The way it goes is you ask a boring question intentionally for the exercise, you get a boring answer back, and then you use that answer as a seed to tease the person. Whatever's unusual or interesting or curious about their answer, you tease them on it, you exaggerate that, and that can become a much more mando and much more interesting conversation very quickly. And if for some reason you can't come up with a tease, just offer value, have an opinion, that works as well, right? So if you say, what do you do for a living? Boring question. You wouldn't say it in a normal game, hopefully, but if you did, it happens. They say, I'm a doctor. Okay, fine. I can tease them about, did they do everything their parents always wanted them to do growing up? Or they must have fucking loved school to be dealing with that many years of it or something like that. There's teases there. But even beyond that, if I can't think of a tease, I can just have an opinion. I think that's super, super cool that you've decided to do X, Y, Z with your life. You know what? I thought about being a doctor, but then this thing happened, and so now I did this as a job, right? Those are fine conversation. Those are interesting conversation. Why? Because again, it's that relatable human experience. Here's a rule of thumb. There's types of conversation where you're offering value and where you're taking value. If you are providing your own life experience, your own thoughts, your own insights, if you're giving them anything in conversation they cannot have with another person, right? A conversation they haven't been asked 1,000 times before that isn't lame and boring and repetitive, you are offering value. When you are just asking questions and not providing any of your own insight, you are taking value. And especially if it feels like filler. If it feels like, I have nothing to say, so where are you from? I have nothing to say, so what do you do? Right? You should be having conversations because you're genuinely interested, and then you should be genuinely believing that you have interesting things to say. And it is true, all right? You've lived a unique and different life than any other human being on the planet, and you've had unique and different thoughts for every moment of that life. Every time you're sharing that, you're interesting. The times you're not sharing that, you're kind of boring. Reason number 3, and quote, I'm ugly as fuck. So you may believe this, and you may even be a little bit right. However, a few insights. Number 1, you're probably not as bad looking as you think you are, okay? You look at yourself all the time, you see all your flaws, you're aware of them, other people aren't. Do you ever have that experience where you have this enormous zit on your face, and it's all you can look at, it's all you can stare at, and then you ask somebody about it, if they notice it, like, what zit? Because they don't give a shit, and they're not looking that closely, and they didn't notice. They just noticed your overall, portrayal of yourself and how you're conveying yourself, and just you overall, and they're not focused on every little blemish. So that's one thing. A lot of guys are absolutely hypercritical of their appearance. That may well be you. But let's say it's not just you being self-conscious. Let's say you are actually a little bit less attractive than average. Well, you know what? You're lucky you're a man. Because if you were a woman and you were physically unattractive, it would be very, very hard to overcome it with personality. But as a man, you can be quite physically unattractive, and if you have a good personality, you carry yourself well, you have a good vibe around you, people respond well to you, any of these kind of things, you can actually make up for appearance in huge ways. There are tons of guys who are fat and still get girls. There are tons of guys who have pockmarked faces who still get girls. There are tons of guys who are bald or balding or some version of that who still get girls. There are tons of guys who are very short who still get girls. Whatever it is you think your physical malady is, there are plenty of guys who still get girls. And yes, you know what? There are even guys who are like visually handicapped in various ways who still get girls. All right, so you absolutely can overcome whatever your minor perceived imperfections are through personality. Finally, even beyond that, a lot of your appearance is not down to your genetic appearance, it's down to your look. You can do tons of things to improve your appearance and look good despite not being genetically perfectly symmetrical and looking like a male model. There are tons of things you can do in terms of upping your style, looking more sophisticated, getting the right haircut that's in style, getting in the gym. There are a lot of things you can do to improve your appearance. And again, you're very lucky you're a man because you're being judged on your appearance as a secondary characteristic to your overall portrayal. If you're a woman, it would be much, much, much harder. But your appearance is not as big a factor as you may think. And final note on your appearance, to the extent that you can't change it, fucking just live with it, okay? I grew up as an athlete. As an athlete, you go into certain games where you're the favorite and you're expected to win. You go into certain games where you're not supposed to win, where you honestly shouldn't win, where even if you play your absolute best, you're only going to win a small fraction of the time. You know what? As an athlete, sometimes we won those games, right? So let's say that there are better looking guys out there and there's you. And let's say that is a disadvantage. Well, what are you going to do? Fucking throw in the towel? No. Just go compete and do the best you can as you are. And sometimes you're going to do great in spite of it. And you know what? Sometimes there are girls that will actually be into your particular look as well, whatever it is. Girls have fetishes for certain things. Girls have preferences for certain things. You may not think you're any girl's type. Guess what? You're wrong. There are girls for whom you are absolutely their type and they're going to swoon for you. But you're never going to find that out if you just quit rather than playing the game. So like any athlete in a competitive endeavor, you don't just quit because the odds are slightly against you. It's like, oh, the Vegas bookies say I'm a 2-1 underdog. I may as well not play. No, get out there and play your heart out and you're going to win some of the time. Maybe you don't win every time, but you know what? You don't have to. You have to meet one girl who fucking loves you and wants you for life, and you are no longer single. In fact, you're married with a great relationship and kids and a great life, okay? It actually literally only has to happen once. It will happen a lot more than once if you do it right, or if you even go out there and do it at all. But you don't have to win every game. You just have to win once. Here's another solution. Do more, right? If you think that only 1 out of every 5 women is going to like you because you're not attractive, well, you do 5 times as many approaches and you make up for it in effort. In conclusion, though, there are plenty of solutions around appearance, and honestly, appearance is probably not nearly as big a factor as you think it is in the first place. Next reason. I don't go outside unless absolutely necessary, like going to work or grocery shopping. And in these rare times when I'm outside, I never get approached by a woman, at least not in a clear way that my stupid brain gets it right. All right, so as a man, you should not plan on being approached by women. You should not need that in order to succeed. There are some very few men that will get approached by women. And if you're out a ton and are reasonable, you will get approached by women just by pure volume of situations and circumstance occasionally. But if you want to have actual opportunities with women, as a man, maybe just that's how the society is, or maybe it's unfair, whatever, you're the one who has to do the approach, all right? And you know what? You're actually lucky. It may seem unlucky, but you're actually lucky because you have control over your own fate and destiny by doing the approach. If you're a woman and couldn't do the approach, which is bullshit because women actually can do the approach, but they think they can't, and there is a little bit of a stigma around it, well, now you have less control about your destiny. As a woman, in that societal way, you would be at the mercy of, oh, I can only talk to the guys that approach me. As a man, you are allowed to approach any woman you want. You can go up and say hi to anyone. You can even go and say, hey, I think you're beautiful. I just wanted to tell you that, to anyone. And, you know, a lot of guys are nervous about this, and so that's why they don't approach. If you need to get over your nervousness, you can just go give a compliment and give yourself permission to walk away after the compliment if you want to. But by doing that, you've opened a door because a certain amount of girls will respond to you positively, and then you will be in a conversation with them. But yeah, if you are, this is very similar in 2 ways, right? Number one, I never leave the house. You're waiting for it to happen and hoping for it to happen in a place where it's never going to happen because they're not going to come to your house. But beyond that, once you're out, you can be proactive and make it happen as well, right? So it's kind of the same thing again. The more doors you knock on, the more positive answers you're going to get. If you never leave the house, you're not knocking on any doors, and also you're not going to have your door randomly knocked on except by maybe the delivery person, which is funny because there's one comment in here where somebody said they married the delivery person. So yeah, in conclusion on this point, Look, as a man, you're going to need to do approaches. You're not going to get approached very often, even if you are very good looking, right? Even if you are in ideal situations, you probably do have to initiate the conversation. So look, that's part of being a man. Just fucking deal with it. Next reason given for being single: I have trouble talking to women, LOL. This is actually a little bit the same as the I don't know what to say, but there are specific skills beyond just conversation here, right? So a lot of guys can have a small talk conversation with a girl, but they have a hard time making it man to woman or talking in a way that's specific to a relationship or that actually goes somewhere. But this is a skill. You specifically can work on and practice flirting. Check out my channel. I have tons of videos on how to flirt, how to tease, what is a push-pull, what is a disqualifier, what is a mini cold read, all these different kinds of ideas, right? I also have tons of videos on how to make a conversation man to woman as a general concept, how to lead a conversation. These are skills you can learn. And yes, if you've never done it, you might not be great at it yet, but that doesn't mean you can't be. There was a time when you weren't great at walking and you fell on your face all the time. There was a time when you weren't great at talking and all you could do is gurgle incoherently. If you had quit on those things and never failed at them, you would have never learned them. If you don't go out and try, and again, there's plenty of resources around this channel so you can try and fail less in the learning process, but it is a skill. It is absolutely learnable. How do I know this? Because I started out not being good talking with women at all, and now I am arguably world-class at talking with women, and I've taught thousands of men how to, be good with women and get the relationships they want as well. It is absolutely 100% learnable. Again, the resources are all over this channel. Check them out. And last but not least, reasons you're single: got my relationship advice on Reddit. Yeah, don't do that. There is a lot of bad advice out there, and in particular, the people that are posting advice on the internet are oftentimes people that are busily posting advice instead of busily having happy relationships. The source of your advice does absolutely matter. Try and get your advice from people that are actually having success, that actually have the life you want, not grumpy people posting on an internet forum. And that goes not just for Reddit, but for a lot of other sources. Yeah, consider the source, get your advice from good places, and test the advice against experience. Don't just blindly follow it, test it against your own life experience, and go try it out and see if it works. And obviously there are reputable people who have been giving advice for 20 years and going out and teaching people in the field. Those are the people you should listen to, maybe a little more than Reddit. To quickly summarize what you should do if you're single: number one, get out of the house. Number two, when you're out of the house, take action, right? Not getting out of the house, not putting yourself in front of girls, not taking action with girls is the biggest thing. Beyond that, game is a skill. And you know what? Even things like improving your appearance is a skill. There are things you can proactively do. The worst thing you can do, the one thing you absolutely should not do, is give up. Please keep taking practice steps. Please keep improving a little bit every day. Put yourself out there. I promise if you're on that right path, you will get there a lot faster than you think. Final way to not be single: like this video, subscribe to the channel. Oh, and by the way, if you have some other crazy reasons why you're single, please post them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. It should be amusing for all of us. All right, take care. See you on the next one.